The Good Jesus Street is one of the oldest in Recife, the capital of the state of Pernambuco, located in northeast of Brazil. Hundreds of people pass through it every day, students of the area, Brazilian tourists, and visitors from the four corners of the earth. A ceramic plaque posted on the first building of the street calls our attention to something strange. The plaque reads, Rua do Bom Jesus, Good Jesus Street, formerly called the Rua dos Judeus, the Street of the Jews. After 350 years of silence, here finally is the first recognition that on this spot there flourished a sizable Jewish community, whose history is an important chapter in the story of the Jewish migrations, in the struggle of the Jews to preserve their identity, their culture, and their faith. A few steps down the street is the Kahal Zur Israel, the first synagogue in the Americas. The synagogue was mentioned in 17th century documents found in Holland and Portugal, but the actual site on this street was only established when the archaeological excavations found a mikveh, the authenticity of which was confirmed by a rabbinical tribunal in the year 2000. The building was opened to the public in December of the year of 2001. The reconstructed building has become a cultural and historical research center, serving academics, tourists, and students. Around 2,000 people visit the site every month. Here, they can see the remains of the first synagogue in the Americas, evidence of a Jewish community, and two moments of their history. The first, many decades before the Dutch conquered Brazil, was the time when dozens of New Christian families fled to Brazil, seeking refuge from the persecutions of the Inquisition in the Iberian Peninsula. Many of these families had been betrayed because they continued to practice their faith. Today, we can read the names of these families in the records of the Holy Office. The second phase was marked by a time of religious tolerance, when those first New Christian families and their descendants joined the Jews who came to Recife with the Dutch. And in this new atmosphere, they were able to create a Jewish community, the first in the Americas. They were about 1,500 people, or around 50% of the white population of Recife. They were active in every part of the society and an important force in the region. But after the end of the Dutch occupation in 1654, the Jewish community scattered, and their memory was practically wiped out of the history of Brazil, until the restoration of the Kahal Zur Israel synagogue, when their memory was recovered. Using the information that has come to light through the excavations, the Jewish Historical Archive of Pernambuco has put together a picture of those times, shaping the history into a tour of Jewish history and culture, which invites tourists from around the world to experience surprising scenes and tales from those times. A few steps from the first synagogue is the house of Duarte Saraiva, a New Christian returning to Judaism, who opened his house to the first religious meetings, bringing together both New Christians and the Jewish people who had come with the Dutch. This Duarte Saraiva was a very successful merchant who owned various sugarcane mills and who purchased the spot where the Kahal Zur Israel was built. Olinda, recognized today as a World Heritage Site, is the source of much of the history of the New Christians from the earliest times of colonization in Pernambuco. Its ancient streets and hills suggest intrigue, love, and betrayal. Victims of the denunciations were people like Bento Teixeira, author of the Prosopopeia, the first literary work produced in Brazil, like Rui Gomes, goldsmith, and his son, the first apothecary, as well as 4 other families who lived where today is a convent school. The family of Branca Dias and Diogo Fernandes was denounced for preparing their house and food for the Shabbat and for having meetings with the Sefer Torah. Diogo was owner of the Camaragibe sugar mill, considered the center of New Christian spiritual activity in the Portuguese colonial era. One of the stories from those times is that a person wearing certain clothes as a secret sign would walk through Olinda to indicate the secret Jews' residence that there would be a religious services in Camaragibe. In the records of the denunciations, we can read about New Christians who came all the way from Olinda in wagons decorated with the branches of trees to celebrate Sukkot in Camaragibe. The scene of the Camaragibe sugarcane mill, which is still standing today, is full of stories and myths which still remains in the popular imagination about the presence of the New Christians. It is possible that this chapel on the mill grounds was constructed on the site of the 16th century synagogue. There are people that say that the symbols carved in the stone floors of the main house have something to do with Hebrew. This hidden Jewish practice continued until 1630, when the Dutch West Indies Company conquered the northeast of Brazil, bringing the idea of religious tolerance. For the new Christians, this meant that they could be open about their Jewish religious practices, and for the Sephardim from Amsterdam, new opportunities. With the Dutch occupation forces, many Jewish soldiers also came. Later, they would form a Jewish troop based at the Jewish guardhouse, probably on the site in Olinda where the Milagres Church is located today. It is recorded that, in order to be relieved of their duties in the Shabbat, the soldiers had to pay a tax to the Dutch West Indies Company. After 1635, hundreds of Portuguese Jews immigrated to Brazil. They had the advantage of being able to speak both Portuguese and Dutch. They were the Portuguese Jews from Amsterdam. They became important for trade, for the exploration of the interior, for sugar production, and for the urban expansion of the city of Recife, as in the land fillings and constructions. The city of Recife expanded, and people began to build on the island next to it, called the Antônio Vaz Island, and the Maurice city was built. To connect these two places, a tall bridge had to be built. For reasons we don't know yet, the Jewish engineer Baltazar da Fonseca, who was responsible for building the bridge, only finished half of it. To avoid public criticism, the Dutch governor Johan Maurits van Nassau paid for the construction of the other half out of his own pockets. Defied, he simulated the flight of a bull over the bridge on the day it was inaugurated, creating a fact still alive in the local folklore. So many people came to the ceremony that the bridge earned 1,800 florins in tolls that day. The building of the bridge marks one of the first important changes in the landscape of the Capibaribe River. The river was the pathway into the inland. It carried the sugar, it watered the food-producing lands, it was essential for Recife and the neighboring areas. And for the Jewish community, it had its own importance. It was the only access to the Jewish cemetery, the same way it was in Amsterdam. The Jewish cemetery of the Dutch period is previous to the synagogue. Its location is indicated in some original Dutch maps and is to be confirmed by archaeological works. The river was the way some Jews had to reach Recife and the synagogue, just like the members of the Jewish family named Pina, owners of one of the islands of the river estuary. Their island was known as the Manisnifer Island, owing to the fame that one of the members of the family had of being a miser. Today, Pina is a highly populated neighborhood of Recife, named after the Jewish family that first lived there. Standing on the shores of Pina, you can clearly see the reefs, which, like rocks, separate the inland river waters from the fierce ocean, creating the safe harbor which allowed the building of the city and gave it its name, Reef Recife. A safe harbor also for the Jews who in the 17th century were able to build their Kahal Zur Israel. Zur, which also means rock, the last thing they saw in 1654 when they left Recife in search of another safe haven.
Al Señor que nos crió, démosle agradecimientos por los bienes que nos dio. Alabado sea su santo nombre, el que siempre hemos apiadado. Loa al Señor que es bueno, que para siempre es su merced. Bendigamos al Altísimo por su ley primeramente, que liga nuestra casa con el cielo continuamente. Alabado sea su santo